June. It's an amazing thing. All right, we are live. Good morning. It's Sean from Traffic Services, and as per usual, I'm joined by my partner. I can't say partner anymore. My partner Brandon, and of course, Fridays have become the day of Scott. It's the Safe Driver Day.
I like that. I
This
like
is
to be
Scott.
regular.
Yes, as do I. It's Scott Marshall, the safe driver, who joins us on a regular basis. He's a former judge from Canada's Worst Driver, but he's the safe driver. He has a podcast, he has a blog, and a man of many talents, and safe driving is just one of them. So it is. Did we already say what day it is? That it's the 4th of June. We'll say it again just in case. So
Everything just blurs and blends together.
it does, but it's a good day because it's Friday, and the weekend is upon us. Yeah. So we got lots of stuff to talk about. Just out of the box, I wanted to mention our Vision Zero enforcement team. Or do you have that up, Mr. Brennan?
Well, I know where they are.
Oh, that's perfect. Then you can tell us.
So today they will be in 11 division as well as 51 division. Let me just double check that for you guys.
So it was 11 and 53 division.
11:53. It's Friday. I'm tired.
It's just a number.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, for a lot of people, it is just a number, and understanding the divisions that covers is an entirely different concept. So we want to bring more information as to what that really covers. But at the end of the day, the Vision Zero enforcement team, VZET, is a dedicated team of officers who go out and focus on serious driving behaviors, those serious behaviors that cause or lead to serious injury and death on our roadways. And they're actively trying to reduce that number. So they do good work. They're very busy, and we thank them for their service and dedication. But I want to just bring also, get it out in the open, in the front, before we get into our chat, is that we actually have a live chat. And if you are watching us live, and I see that we have a number of people in the that are viewing on different platforms, if you'd like to ask us questions for myself, Brandon, or Scott, please throw a comment into the box. It'll show up here. We'll be able to address it. And there's the sample right there. It'll come up. We'll throw your question on screen, and there you will take over the show, hijacking it so that we can discuss your topic instead of ours. But with that, Brandon, you've got a bunch of stuff that's on the go.
Oh yes, we have lots of things on the go, as we always do with our Scott's Thoughts sessions. One thing that I thought would be interesting to talk about, we talked a little bit about it yesterday from sort of the policing standpoint, and that's the idea of making a traffic complaint or a community-based complaint. And we took the folks through an example of how you could make such a complaint. But there are situations where you won't have time to sit down at a computer and write out the situation, where you might see something happening on the road in front of you at the time, and how to make the complaint, and why you should make the complaint in order to keep somebody safe. And Scott, I was listening to one of your episodes, I believe episode 37, where you were discussing specifically a scenario that you encountered, and I'm sure you've encountered others before. I was just wondering if you could talk about that for us.
Yeah. So one of the issue that a lot of people have, and I'll call it an issue. Maybe it's an issue, not an issue me, but the fact is that when you see something dangerous, risky, scary, and we often say to ourselves or our passengers, "Wow," and then we keep driving and we just keep going, minding our own business. Sometimes the other people on the road who are in such a distress, they need that person to stop and say, "Can I help you?" So if you can't stop safely, and sometimes stopping on the side of the road is not the safe place to be, it is important to call a 911 call. So I did that one day. I was going 427 south, and there was a pedestrian sitting on the shoulder with their back up against the barrier just before the QEW Gardner. Now they're on the southbound side, and I have the ability in my vehicle to call 911 without touching my phone, so I did. And the dispatcher had said that they had a call, but that the person was sitting in northbound lanes. Well, if there's an officer that comes up northbound, they're not going to see anybody because the barrier is so high.
Yep.
So they were happy that I called them. I gave them my name and phone number as contact, and then I kept checking media, I kept checking news, hoping I wasn't going to hear about the worst case scenario
Mm-hmm.
where they wandered, because you never know why they're there. They could be mentally distressed and lose their coherence about where they are, and next thing they know, they wander in front of a vehicle who's traveling 100K or more. So that was the first thing I did was to call 911, and luckily there was nothing in the news or the media that said a pedestrian was struck on the 427 the Q. So I was quite happy that they were taken care of in a safe way. So I think it's important that it is our community. Just because think of it like your house. If someone is running across your front lawn or going down your driveway, you want to protect your property. You do pay for your property, things like that. But your property is also your city. And we have to look after our city and the people that live in it or travel through it or work in it. And the fact that you don't know what the situation is. You just see the exterior and you don't know if they are having a huge issue. And just making a step forward and calling. And you know what, even if they've said, the dispatcher says, we've already had a lot of calls, thank you very much, you've done your part.
Yeah. And, a lot of people have a phobia about calling the police because they think, well, this isn't really an emergency. This isn't something that there's people who really need to get through. They should get through. I'm not going to call. Somebody else will call. There's all these reasons not to call 911. And you know what? There are alternatives. If you feel that way, there's something called a non-emergency number, which that could fall into. And for Toronto, it's 416-808-2222. And that will put you on a second tier, not an emergency. Though, person who's looking for help right now, they'll get the priority. But your non-emergency call will still get through to a dispatcher and can be routed to the appropriate place. And like what happened with you, Scott, they already had the information. Great updates on information, fantastic. These are important things. And I utilize non-emergency contact numbers for other police services myself because I too know I can categorize what needs now and what needs shortly, and it's important to know the difference.
Exactly. You could have someone that's at the side of the road with vehicle problems and things like that. It's not a 911 call, but they need help. And if they're not a member of CAA or any other auto service club, then they do need some help. Maybe they just need someone to help them change a tire.
But I'll give you a scenario where it could be an emergency in that if they're in a really bad place where cars are swerving because they can't see them coming around the corner, that could be an emergency. So use your best judgment. Worst case scenario, 911 might be the easiest way, or if you have a service in your car that automatically dials and that makes it safer for you to call.
Yep.
We understand. We appreciate that you're contributing to solving a problem and saving a life.
That's right. Absolutely. I hear it on the traffic reports, certain things are on the road. It's not an emergency that there's a ladder on the road. I always hear about a ladder. And it's not a corporate ladder, but the ladder's on the road and someone needs to move it out of the way. So it's not a 911 call, but it could create a collision or a collision because there is that debris.
Absolutely. I was driving and saw a brick on the road recently. And a brick, you say, well, it's in the center of the lane. If I were to stop and change it, I could end up being rear-ended. I could be hit. I could be injured. It's better to call someone with emergency lights who can slow down traffic and get rid of it. But people are helpful and get the worst end of it sometimes. Others say, don't worry about it. It's somebody else's problem. So there's a full spectrum of opportunity there. At the end of the day, calling either 311 in Toronto, to notify services that can be resolved, because that could damage someone's tire. It could fly up after being struck and hurt somebody. It's still something of concern, and we appreciate when you notify us.
So can we extend this a little bit?
Please.
Kind of go in a different direction.
Back.
So what about the fact that, your listeners and your viewers, when you see a situation where, let's say there's a driver ahead in the next lane and they have a brake light out or a turn signal out. And have you ever stopped beside them, rolled the window down and said, your passenger brake light is out, right? You're just doing a little service, your good deed for the day to help a motorist to communicate effectively, right? I had someone who they had a flat tire and they were driving normal speed.
Sure.
And it wasn't flat like it was on the rim, but it would have been close. But it's also going to affect the control of their vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And if it shreds, then it could actually hit somebody else, right? So I ended up stopping and saying, do you realize you have a flat tire? No, this was on the 400.
Wow.
In south. We ended up being stopped in traffic, and I guess close to Finch. And I rolled the window down and I did the gesture. Remember the crank windows, right? So I think a millennial won't know what this meant.
You need a new button, button press.
It's got to be a. But I did that, and she rolled the window down. And I said, "Your back passenger tire is flat," and she was like, "I didn't know." And then I let her get in front of me, and she worked her way over to the shoulder, I guess, calling for assistance. So making that little verbal, friendly, not hey, but it's like, hey, did you know? And there was someone that at the gas station. This is the last one. Gas station. They took their gas cap off and put it on top of the pump.
Yeah.
And then they went inside and paid him. And I saw them getting into their vehicle. I went over, and COVID, I went 6 feet to their vehicle. I said, hey, and they opened up the door. I said, your gas cap's on top. Oh, thanks. That's it. How long did it take me?
They have those great little holders that no one knows how to use that are right on the gas, very often.
I know.
Or tethers, but it happens all the time. It's funny you mentioned that telling them about issues with their car. I very often talk to people who have no rear lighting on because they have their daytime runners on auto and they don't realize, or they're just off and it's autopilot, but their dashboard's illuminated, so they assume that their headlights are on and their taillights are on, and of course that's not the case. But it's amazing how few people respond when you give them a tap on the horn or you try and wave. There's people who, in certain cultures, who don't want to engage because it could be seen different ways. But I had someone who was actively on the phone on the Don Valley Parkway on my way home, and I was next to them, and it got to the point where I just sat on the horn. I literally just pressed. They would not. They were so engrossed in their phone that they didn't respond, or maybe they were avoiding responding. But in any case, I eventually got their attention, and they were shocked. So
yeah, okay. So road safety is my passion. I've been in road safety professionally for 33 years. I eat, sleep, and think driving all the time, even on my days off. So I'm on my way to my dad's or my brother's on this very quiet road, but there's traffic lights close to where I live. And the driver ahead of me had that situation where their headlights were on, there's no tail lights. So at the red light just changed, so we had a fresh red. I secured my vehicle, nobody behind. I put it in park. I actually went up to the side of the car and said, "Excuse me, you have no tail lights." And then I asked, it was a younger person, I said, "Are your headlights switched to auto?" And they said, "Yes." I think they were a little surprised that some bald dude is standing beside their car at night. And I said, "Switch it to low beam. The auto won't put on your taillights all the time. Depends on the car you have." And it was a Honda product, and that was the case. And I got back in my car, the light was still red. It didn't take very long at all. But then when the light turned green and they proceeded and took their foot off the brake, their taillights were on. So I have to go that extra mile or kilometer.
It's funny. I another driving home story, and it's specifically what you're talking about. It was dark out. The driver that I heard honking, and there was a car that I thought was being very aggressive to another vehicle. So it got my attention. I started paying attention, and it was actually a very courteous driver trying to communicate the fact that there were no brake lights on, and then it became a tag team. I pulled up beside, they pulled up behind, and it was a great thing. And when it was all said and done, and the driver who was also happened to be looking at their telephone, when they finally regained consciousness and were focused on driving again, turned their headlights on, the two of us had a little thumbs up session, because it was really great. We had this cooperative effort, and we succeeded. They turned their lights on, and they were probably 5 minutes from home. But
that's awesome.
It is nice.
It's a learning point, right? They realize, and now the person that I stepped out of the car for and spoke, they now know that it's not the auto that they want, that they have to switch to low beam, and hopefully that turned into a new habit.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that we've got some more people that are watching live. Hey, how you doing? If you're new to us, I'm Sean. That's Brandon. That's Scott. And we are live. It's actually live. If you have questions, please throw them up into the chat. We would love to have your input, your questions to feed these sessions. We have lots to talk about. We can talk for hours, you may have noticed. That being said, we'd love to address your questions if you're watching live. So feel free to jump into the chat. Brandon, what have you got for us next?
Well, here's a hot topic, and I think it'll get a lot of people in the chat excited because it's one of the biggest challenges to road usage when it comes to summertime. And Scott, you talked about this recently on another one of your episodes, construction. So how to handle driving through construction or around construction workers. They react and they engage with the road a lot differently than like an average pedestrian might, right? They're used to standing right beside busy traffic and big machines. How can a driver who's not familiar with the construction industry navigate this safely?
Well, the first thing is recognizing that it's someone's life, that although the construction worker may be very familiar and used to the fact that they can walk right beside live lanes without anything in between, and there's no barrier, it's just like cones. One of the things that we see, and we really should notice it, is the fact that our speeds need to be reduced. Yes, there's signs that say fines are doubled during construction zones. So it's not so much the speeding aspect. So we're going to drop our speed, and that's one thing. If at all possible, change lanes if you can to create space between the workers and your vehicle. If they stumble, you don't want them stumbling in your path. And it's not really about fault. It's about protecting someone's life who they, at the end of the day, want to go home to their family. It's just like you want to go home to your family, right? So we want to respect that because we want people to respect that from us. Understanding that construction is, we have two seasons in Canada. We have winter and construction.
Absolutely.
Right? So one of the things that you can do is go to your municipality website, find out where the construction areas are, and then plan your moves around it. So if you know certain roads that you would normally take are now going to be under construction, lane reduction up to half, it's going to take you longer to get through it. So is there an alternative path that you could take? Is there a different way where you would normally not take it because it's a little bit longer, but in this case it's quicker because it's not under construction? So there's an alternate route that you could use, right? The other thing too is the fact that construction does slow us down. Ta-da! Accept it, right?
But it's good that it slows it down. When we have situations where people are going and keeping regular speed past those, if something should change up ahead, the reaction tends to be to swerve. Well, when you swerve in a construction zone, you're swerving into people. It's a bad day at the office. And if it's not people, it could be a hole in the ground. And that's going to be changing the dynamics of your collision that is now created based on some kind of avoidance or a disruption in your flow. We want to be cautious. We want to be slow. We want to be aware of what's going on and allow for that reaction gap that, when something happens, you don't have that ability to instantaneously respond. There is a delay.
That's right. And quite often people who are responding and doing a quick swerve or the weave, which is another one of my pet peeves, weaving in and out of traffic, is the fact is, did you leave it late? Are you now late for your destination, late for your doctor's appointment, late for getting to work? Mm-hmm. It's not so much that you're late getting home because there's not a real deadline to get home. So take your time, and if you are going to work and you have to go through the construction areas, leave a little bit earlier. If it depends on how long that road is under construction. Don't forget there's a lot of other people too.
Sure.
And I think the people who are in a hurry are the ones that do the reckless, careless things like tailgating and speeding and weaving. But if you're not feeling pressured, you're less likely to do that, right?
So if the average person is leaving it late, and we're all average to some degree, and we're all leaving it late, we're all stressed. We have that compound stress. Everyone's stressed. It's not a good recipe for success. I like to leave with time to spare, and make it a pleasant drive where I get to listen to my podcast and relax.
That's right.
We've talked about this before. I used to be very close to the station or closer to the station, and my drive was short, but I never even got that opportunity to unwind. And it wasn't until a friend of mine who lived out of the city said, the longer drive is nice. I get me time. So now it's not meditation. I'm still focused on what I'm doing, but it's decompression. It gives me that gap between work and home. So I embrace it.
It is. I think that's a good example. And when you want to start your day, you want to start your day in a relaxed form. If you had a blood pressure device and you could check your blood pressure before you left home and then after you got to work, would there be an increase? Because of the aggravation, the frustration of being late, and it starts your day off in a negativity. So when I'm training new driving instructors, we talk about scheduling. And one of the things I always said is start your day with either a very nice person, because it starts it on a positive, even if they can't drive so well, or start your day with a good driver, because you're starting your day positively. Finish your day the same way. So that way you start your day feeling good, and then you finish your day feeling good. So whenever you've had something nice and good happen in the morning, or you hear a really nice story on the radio, or what have you, it starts your day in a positive, and it allows you to stay positive throughout your day. And then the same thing when you come home, and you get home, instead of being stressed from the traffic and the workday, you're now relaxed and enjoyed what you heard. So we can do the same thing that, okay, I now with traffic expect I'm going to take an hour to get home. With the construction, I now expect an hour and a half.
Sure.
I don't have to like it, but I expect it.
And if you happen to get home earlier, it's a bonus.
Oh, it's like you won the lottery.
I was going to say you buy tickets on the way home.
That's right. My daily commute is right now to get home is about an hour and a half.
Wow.
And it used to be more before more people were working from home. It used to be a 2.5 hour commute home. And that's what I expected every day. So if it took me under 2 hours, it was like winning the lottery. But then when they have construction, and I listen to my favorite station of 680 to hear the traffic reports, plug. They give me alternatives that certain roads are under construction. There was one I left early and they were doing rolling potholes. So I knew that it was going to slow me down. I wasn't stressed because I knew I had to, once I passed it, it was clear. Right. So it's lottery, man. Cool.
I want to change gears for a moment. Actually not for a moment. I want to stay in a different gear. Just want to change gears. We had a story that we put out on our social media platforms on Monday, and it goes back to something we spoke about last week. G1 drivers. So we had a story that we got from one of our officers. He said that in a 24-hour period, he had investigated 3 motor vehicle collisions. Each one had been involving a G1 driver who was unaccompanied, and beyond that, it was a G1 driver who caused the collision. One of my streams is having issues. What's going on here? Are you guys still getting me? We were getting some warning messages came up that thing was going on.
I'm still with you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, we got some pixelation, but so G1 drivers involved, and they were ultimately charged as being responsible. And more to that, the other charges took place as well. That officer approached me on Wednesday and said, "By the way, that's that day you put out the video about my collisions. Yeah, 2 more the same day. So the second day. So in 48 hours, one officer investigated 5 collisions. One of them was a fail to remain. The G1 driver took off from the scene because he didn't want to be caught.
Yeah.
I say he. I don't know if he was a male or female, actually. But in any case, the driver left the scene of the collision. So, and we put that up on TikTok, and the discussion was very interesting. And the response was, well, get your stuff in order. We need to get our G2s. It's not fair that you're making us wait. Which, from my perspective as a police officer, I say, well, driving is a privilege, not a right. If you don't have the authority to drive, don't drive. Do what you did before you turned 16, before you turned your qualifying age to get a license. You managed to get around then. What has changed? I appreciate that it's a long, difficult wait for a lot of people, but I understand that things might be changing soon.
Yes. So road tests once we reach phase 1, road tests will be in place. So for anybody who does have a road test scheduled, it's about communicating with drive test to ensure that their test is still there, that it has not been canceled, because sometimes that does happen. So so it's getting close to that. Driving instruction does not happen until phase 2, unfortunately.
Right.
So if anybody has a road test scheduled and they planned on going with an instructor, you will need to make alternative arrangements.
Okay, so you're going to have your own vehicle. You won't be able to get an instructor's vehicle for that purpose. Scott Matthews, who's a detective constable with Traffic Services here, and the gentleman who generally brings us our stats for impaired driving, has just thrown up a statement in the chat and says it's not rare to have a G1 driver arrested for impaired driving every weekend. So this isn't a pandemic-specific situation that due to delays, it's people making poor choices on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I think we did talk about this last week, the fact that a G1 driver is not insured. And if you are charged with an impaired driving offense, your insurance is not active. The insurance company can choose not to cover any damages that happen because the driver was impaired regardless of any license class.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I've made that statement in the videos I put up on TikTok, and the response is, well, no, the car is insured. How can that not be insured? Well, it's going to be insured for anyone you hurt because the basic coverage is going to be there, but your vehicle is not going to be covered, likely not going to be covered. There's always those situations. I remember finding or stopping somebody. They were involved in a minor collision. They had New York license plates that were 3 years old. Well, I put two and two together and determined they'd been living here illegally using license plates and their vehicle was registered elsewhere. So an investigation took place. They were actually deported as a result of it. But their insurance company, I assumed was going to have the issue with the fact that that person was living outside of the country basically permanently. So there's lots of things you have to be careful. You have to follow the rules. Insurance companies make their rules to some degree.
They do, and the fact that we have a no fault insurance process in Ontario, and it's kind of misleading when you hear about no fault, because what happens is that your insurance company looks after you, and that's the thing that if the licensed driver is the G1 driver, they don't have insurance.
Yeah.
So there's no insurance company to look after you because you're not insured, and if you are insured, then they're the ones that deem at fault. So even if fine gentlemen as yourself, as officers, you may not charge an individual, or you may not charge both drivers, it's the insurance company that can also decide whether or not who's at fault, whether it's 50%, 30%,
yeah.
40%. It's the insurance company that does that.
I was actually shocked to learn. I'm sorry, you go ahead, Brandon.
No, I was agreeing, absolutely.
Oh, okay. Well, I was shocked to find out that even though we charge one person, they don't care. They may not agree with us, and they may attribute fault to somebody that we didn't attribute fault to. So it's very, very interesting.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Just thanks to Scott for throwing your mention in there. I appreciate it. We got a couple minutes. Is there anything that you guys would like to chat about that we haven't covered yet?
Well, in the vein of collisions, we had those that motorcycle collision that happened. What was it, over the weekend, Sean? And
it was the 31st.
Yeah. So 2 people severely injured and 1 person
fatally.
Yeah, fatally injured. So just sort of along the vein of our discussion about construction. With construction being a threat on the road during the summer season, you're finding that that's when our collisions are at their highest, and a large factor in that is motorcycle collisions, and they're very vulnerable because they don't have the same protections as the other drivers either. So, yeah,
and we know that we talked about this before. May was motorcycle awareness, and I think all summer, all seasons, that you're going to have motorcycles out. They need to be aware, and it's really about being patient, being calm, checking your mirrors a lot. And if you are a motorcycle rider, don't take those chances that that a driver who's unaware of you is not going to see. There's a lot, just like anything else, there's a lot of really good drivers. There's a lot of good truck drivers, motorcycle riders, automobile drivers. And it's the ones that aren't good that we remember. And so when someone says all these motorcycle riders are aggressive and whatever, okay, so I want you to count how many motorcycle riders you see every day and how many aggressive ones. And they don't, because the ones who stand out are the ones you remember. And I did see a motorcycle rider the other day, 407, flying, and my guesstimate, I'm in the right-hand lane doing just over 100K with traffic in front and behind. They came down the merge lane, I'm guessing 150, 160, and they flew.
It's like you're not even moving at that point.
Yeah, that was one. And all the other ones that are going with the flow and riding as they should, and keeping the space and trying to stay out of blind spots of other drivers, those are the ones that we should also recognize and realize, hey, you're doing a good job, but we have to be aware of the ones who are not following the rules, aren't good teammates, right? And as Brandon said, I mean, they don't have much to protect them. Right?
Yeah, that nice safety cage is not present.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of following the rules, we talked briefly about impaired operation. I'm curious because we get the question all the time, like how much over the speed limit can we do? How impaired can I be before I get arrested? By the way, it's 0. Do you get questions like that yourself, Scott? Like from the people you instruct?
Yeah. So one of the things that helps protect us as a driver is having a space bubble around our car, or space cushion. And I want space in front, behind, and to the side. So I'm going to do whatever I can to try to keep that space. And I'll teach students to do the same thing. I'll train instructors to do the same thing. And if someone behind is really close, what some drivers want to do is, oh, I have a tailgater, I'll speed up. Well, the problem is you're speeding up to someone else now who's not going quite as fast, and now you're tailgating them, and they're being tailgated. So quite often the person who wants to go fast is tailgating. So we're going to go as fast as the flow goes. For temporary measures, quite often it's not very long at all, but it's just to try to keep that space bubble. Sometimes I have to accelerate to avoid a problem. We talk about someone merging in on the expressway. I may have to accelerate faster than the speed limit so I can change lanes safely to let that person merge. Once they've merged in and everything is good, I can always go back to the right-hand lane and back down the speed limit if that's what the traffic is doing. So it's a temporary measure to protect you, your passengers, and other road users. Right. So I do get that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Another interesting thing I actually wanted to pick your brain on, because I was listening to it on your podcast, and I thought this might actually create some good discussion between us, or you and Sean even. Your idea about the authorities of a construction worker. So you had a situation where somebody was trying to usher you through an intersection at a red light, and there was still cross traffic occurring. I think you were with a student at the time, and you were saying, "No, we're not listening to this guy."
Yeah. So they're trying to do a good job. The construction worker, and we've seen them. They have the stop and the slow sign, and they're there to make sure that the construction area is safe for either the construction vehicles to enter and exit, or for drivers to share a laneway. And so we were at a traffic light, and the light is still red. It's still operating, and there was some cross traffic from our left-hand side. And so our light was red, and the cross traffic had the green, obviously. And although there's no one coming, the construction worker waved us to go through the red. And I told my student, no, we don't go because we're still facing a red light. And then they got a little, aggressive. Come on, get through. No, it's still red. And my window was down. It was a nice day, but not super hot. And he came to the side, and it was all about, come on, you got to go through. No, I can't. We still have a red light. And they're not an officer of the law. Now, if a police officer waves you through, yes, you go through. Because you're an officer of the law. You're protecting the Highway Traffic Act. And it's important that we do, because if we don't, it's also a violation for failing to follow directions of a police officer.
Sure.
So, but construction workers are not. So we still have to make legal and safe choices, even though it might be safe. It's not legal.
Well, it's legal for them to tell you to stop. It's not legal for them to tell you to go against other traffic. Like, and would they really sit there and say, no, it was really me who caused that collision, officer, when things go wrong? Yeah. I don't think you'll be seeing them. But I've seen that a lot, and myself, and I have the joy of having a different avenue to respond, because I now want to educate those folks, and we even have a team for construction here that go and monitor those sites and make sure they're operating within the rules. We then communicate that to that team. That team communicates with those folks, and hopefully we resolve those issues.
That's good, and I think there's a lot to know about being a driver and being a safe driver. It's not about passing a road test. That allows you to get onto the road by yourself. It's all about being up to date with all the different scenarios. Mm-hmm. And I've done teaching students for decades, but you haven't always come across every situation. So that's why you can always find out, and every day you're learning something new.
Sounds good. No, it's 100% correct. Scott Marshall, the Safe Driver. You can follow him on Twitter at Safe Driver. He's a blogger. You can get his blog at www.thesafedriver.ca. And of course, my favorite portion is Scott's podcast, Speed Bumps, the Safe Driving Podcast, available wherever podcasts can be downloaded. Thank you, Scott, again for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you. And
back at you guys.
have a wonderful weekend. And for everyone watching, regardless of the platform you're on, you can get us at Twitter at Traffic Services. You can get us at Instagram at Traffic Services Toronto. My favorite has been TikTok, which is where we are going right after we wrap up here. You can get us at Traffic Services there, where we have fantastic content. I don't know why I think that's so wonderful. Maybe because we produce it all in-house here, but it's good stuff. We go live for about an hour answering your questions. It's like a fire hose of questions every day, about 200 people to 400 people in the room at any given time. So feel free to jump in and get your questions answered. Of course, if you'd like to email us, you can get us at trafficservices@Toronto Police. And that wraps it up. Actually, no, it doesn't. I have to share one thing. And it's this TikTok video of my sergeant. We did this. This is a transition effect. The quick change. He went out for a ride yesterday. It was pretty awesome, and we've had a lot of fun with this video. So. Yeah, I had to take the opportunity to throw that on the screen. So once again, thanks very much. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will catch you soon.
Drive safe.
Take care, guys.
Drive safe.